Hello, everyone. Hope you're well. It's been a minute. This is the third session of public speaking. I've been holding a masterclass on how to speak well. The whole idea has been that communication is the core or the foundation of who we are and what we do. Many people who are at work, whether you're doing business, rely on communication. And the reason is because there's always a message that you're passing. This morning I was somewhere and I was doing an hour just speaking, public speaking. Some of it could be in a season where you're preparing for an interview that is public speaking. There's always a group of one or two, a group of two or three people upwards who want to listen to your story. This is actually the third session and the final one. Later on, I'm preparing a 3-hour masterclass, just 3 hours video that you can actually listen and watch. And I'll just be delving deeper into the psychology of public speaking. How do you speak to convict people's hearts, to pass a message, to sell? Because everything on this world is about public speaking. Last week in Life Canvas Garage, actually I ran a mentorship session for young people between the ages of 20 to 35. Last week we were just looking at examples of some great speakers on earth. And one of the mentees or the people in the call last week talked about the greatest dictator on earth. And I was actually wondering how he could convince his people to kill more than 10 million people. I'm not sure it's about 10 or 2 million, but I just know that there was a big genocide that happened in Germany. The Nazis were there who did it. You know, the great dictator. But one of the things you'd want to go and watch is a documentary about him, how he was a very great public speaker, how he'd use emotions, and that is what politicians do or great communicators do. Just the power of the voice, the sound. Today, I want to talk about a few minutes on what is your unique proposition and how can you be unique when you are doing public speaking. Allow me to do a short presentation here. This may not be as engaging as other sessions because I'm recording this and then I'm going to share. Find most of my talks on my YouTube page, The Kenyan Architect or Kenyan Architect. You'll actually see a lot of the things that I've been speaking about there. I want to talk about the unpredictable voice, how you can be unique on stage, how can you be unique in your message, and what is it that you need to craft your message to look like for it to sound unique. One of the things that human beings suffer is the trap of being in their comfort zone, one, but also number two, generally, being in the trap of conformity, conforming to the norm of what the world sees them. And that is what I call the sameness trap. And what that does is that it makes many speakers to be unforgettable. Many speakers are unforgettable. And if you want to try this, is many of you who go to church cannot remember what was preached last Sunday. Because what the preacher did, took his Bible, prepared maybe a few weeks or some days before Sunday. He came on stage and spoke. And most of them usually shout on top of their voices. And if they cannot shout, some of the churches we go to, this more like they're singing. And they sound like this. Brothers and sisters, what the text is telling us is that we should be loving people. Because when you love people, people become godly. I don't know how many of you want to be loving people, but my prayer for you is that you be loving people. They're like musical, monotone, flat. They don't employ drama. They don't employ tonal variation. There's no pacing. There's no change of pitch. They don't even have props. I'm here to go to a church that uses props to convey a message. There's one American preacher who does this so well. Every time he's on stage, he uses a lot of props. Can be controversial, but either way, it doesn't matter what the content of your voice or the content of whatever you want to say is important. If the people cannot remember whatever you said, then public speaking is null and void. When you go to conferences, workshops, you'll find that 90% of conference talks are actually forgotten within a week. And maybe you've traveled from Kenya to Miami, you're from Dallas, you've gone to California, or you are in Philippines, you come all the way to South Africa because of this wonderful health summit organized by the UN or WHO. But then everybody that is there sounds academic because they have serious points they want to hammer home. Audience, most of the time, do not remember what you're saying. But today, I want to look at how do you make your talk to be very unique. So most of us watch TED Talks, and I know last week we talked about how to copy well, how to look at some of the greatest people who are good at public speaking, and just to see what techniques they use. There's a bit about that. But now the trap is this, you don't want to be a photocopy of another photocopy because them, they also learned it from somewhere else. So you can be here in South Africa, you're giving a talk, but then somebody can say, I think I've listened to you before in Brazil. You may not be the same person, but you're basically copying what another speaker in the US was sounding like. So you're basically photocopies of another photocopy. Rarely do you become original. And most of us usually think the same way. Last week, I know as beginner public speakers, I talked about having a huge formula where you begin maybe with a parable, a short story, a figure of a data that is very catchy. And I talked about how when you're beginning public speaking, you begin by the power of three. People usually remember three, not more than three. 3 points, three powerful stories. Action points, three of them. The less, the better. And most of us have got the same stories throughout because we don't want to be vulnerable enough so that people can actually learn. So you may be technically correct, but emotionally invisible, sounding like everyone else. And for me, this is very particular because we go to the same schools, we dress the same, we act the same, we almost choose the same careers. Most of the time, when you look at a child, when a child is born between age 3, 4, 5, 6, the mind is usually very blank. But, and this may sound very controversial, but sometimes the school system that we take the children to corrupts their mind and they begin to become like photocopies. So the child, maybe they want to become a DJ, they want to become musicians, they want to become dancers. And so what happens is that whenever they're in kindergarten, they're told how to do ballet, taekwondo. But when was the last time you saw a ballet dancer earning a good amount of money? Even DJs, mostly in the African setups, rarely do we get people who pursue some of those unique talents as careers. Why? The sameness trap. Our marriages are the same. We go home, we're on our phones, the man is there in the sitting room, legs on the couch, watching TV, the ladies are in the kitchen. Sameness trap. We have weddings the same. Who told us to be having white gowns and suits? The one I'm putting on. The sameness trap. Because most of us want to conform. We want to be like any other person. And so we want to be like our peers. We want to go to the same restaurants. Who said if you're having a wedding, you must call 200, 300 people to come and witness? Why don't you have a small wedding? Sameness trap. And because of that pressure, we always want to sound like other people, so we lose our unique voice. This was actually in session one when we were talking about how do you create your message. And part of the thing that I talked about is each one of us has got a wound or a scar. Can be a failure. This year I've gone to several interviews and I've failed, no matter how much I prepared. Last year, the same. I've actually applied to over 100 companies and I've received, I think, less than 20 or 30 responses, either in terms of come to the interview or rejections. That can be a scar if I don't harness it well. And that is a story that I have. And what is the story? The story of resilience. Even though I've applied to many organizations, but I'm still there. I don't know how many of you have got a wound that you need to share your story about. The pain that you've processed becomes the permission for the audience for hope. Three things many of us live by hope, either fear or desire. In every story, there's always a message of hope. I hope to heal and I hope that things will be better. My relationships are not going well, but I hope one day they're going to be better. The marriage is not going well, but I hope it's going to be better. Right now, I don't have tarmac, I don't have school fees, or I don't have a job, but things are going to be better. But also, we always have a sense of fear. Last week, I was talking about, and you can actually go and watch that YouTube public speaking 101 on my YouTube channel, The Kenyan Architect. I was talking about how it took me over 7 years to compile a book. This week, I just received physical copies of some of the books I've written. 7 years. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, I was writing, but then I would start and stop. Why? Because of fear. I had pain, I had sorrow, I had failures, I had scars, I had wounds, I had failure stories that I needed to share with someone that they can make it. When I look at my journey 5 years later, I'm in a very good job. I'm in the humanitarian sector, managing programs, partnerships, innovation, traveled the world, supporting over 25,000 families in Kenya and even beyond, consulting in Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, supporting innovation in the USA. But that was not my story 7 years ago. So what is your scar? What is that thing that you really need, that people need to get out? That rallying call begins with your scar, the pain, and the wound. But also number two is what is your obsession? What are you obsessed about? What do you think about most of the time? So for me, I think about young people most of the time. I think about talent. I think about good food. I like traveling and just exploring restaurants. I think about innovation. I like testing ideas. When I'm with you in the car, I want to try out a few things. I want to talk about new ideas that are changing the world. I like talking about organizations that are doing groundbreaking innovations. What is it that you are obsessed about? We call it passion. You should speak about it, write about it, be obsessed about it. Obsession reads as authority on stage, borrowed passion reads as performance. So one of the things you don't want to do, you don't want to sound like other people. So you need to be unique. And that is what obsession is. So what basically happens is whenever you are obsessed about that thing, the 5 or 7 or 20 minutes that you get on stage becomes it. People can actually see this is an authority in this area. Why? Because your obsession comes out on stage. But if you're not obsessed with a particular message, your story, your unique proposition, it becomes hard. You look like somebody performing. Another bit is about contradictions. What is it that you are doing that is controversial and you want the world to know? So you can talk about your scars, you can talk about the thing you're obsessed about, speak about it, research about it. But what is that thing that is so contradicting, called contradictory, that you want other people to know or learn about? So, for example, for me, my life is not a straight line. I describe my life as a river. A river begins from the mountain, a river begins sometimes from the lake, and it meanders downstream. And over time, a river cuts through rocks, creating gorges. A river meanders through swampy areas, creating another swamp. A river sometimes separates into two and then creates a mass of land, a small island, and then it continues and pours its contents, the water in an ocean or another river or even a lake. I'm that humanitarian leader. I'm that program's advisor. I'm that innovator who writes novels too. Last week, I finished my novel called Motto is about whatever is happening in the Kenyan schools. Contradiction can be you live this particular life, but also you speak a different language. This is where those people who preach wine but drink water, or it is preaching water and drinking wine, whichever way. When 90% of the people are going A, you want to go to the other side of B. Contradictions. When many people are following feminism, are you the other version that talks about submission or other things? When everybody wants to be independent, you talk about dependence. When everybody wants to talk about dependence, are you the other person? When people are talking about helping and supporting their relatives, are you the person who says, I think black tax is really killing many of our young people who are getting into jobs. So what is this contradiction that you have? Controversy sells. And sometimes you may not live it, but maybe you are so good at advocating for it and voicing it. So write about your scars, speak about your scars, your obsessions, your contradictions, but also what is the soil that you plant your seeds in? So I'm talking about the language, I'm talking about the culture, I'm talking about the background, the neighborhood, the ecosystem that you grew in, the school you went to, all that shapes the message and the tonality of whatever thing that you're doing. Last we talked about the texture of your speech. So it could maybe you grew up in Kisumu, and so there are some things that happen in Kisumu in the Luoland. You want to bring them up so that when you go and see people say, wow, that Luo guy, there's a message that he has. He talks so well. So that you don't bring in another accent. So your accent becomes the texture upon which the message is relayed. So if you're in Kikuyu, and what is it that is so famous in Kikuyu and people really know you as that Kikuyu speaker? It's okay to be branded like that. But then you want to use your background, you want to use your culture, you want to use your ecosystem, your neighborhood, everything that is within you to voice out that thing or that message that is within you. So, do you have a scar? Are you obsessed about something? Do you have a controversy or a contradictory message? And what is it that has helped you grow over the years? That is a message that you need to let out. So let me talk about creativity on stage. I research a lot about creativity, innovation, ideas, prototyping, designing with people. So this is how I think about it. So after high school, I went to a college in Kisumu. It's called Mwangaza at college. So my father wanted me to go and study accounts. Reason being, most of his friends who were being promoted had studied accounts, and you know how supermarkets work. By then, my dad was working in supermarket in Kisumu. So he was wondering why other people are being promoted. But then when he studied, he saw that most of them had studied accounts. I'm not sure what he knew, but looking at the back, looking back, I'm looking at most supermarkets want people who know how to do maths, accounting because of the cashier. 90% of the value proposition you can bring to a supermarket is taking stock, selling, and profits. And all of that, 90% of the work is maths. The other bit is about marketing, but rarely do we even market and advertise supermarkets because, yeah, people just go there. But then I decided to go a different path. I went to Mwangaza Art School to learn painting. So I did a diploma in fine arts and performing arts. So I can paint using oil, acrylic, poster colors, watercolor. One of my most interesting sessions would be when we are taken to the lake or we are taken to a different landscape and paint that. and would be given a canvas, blank. Most of the time it's white, would prime it. If it's not white, we would actually prime it. So the idea of taking white paint and putting it on the canvas so that the whiteness becomes something clear, something pure, something virgin for us to paint upon. So the canvas becomes white for us to put our thoughts and whatever we are seeing and imagination, and that is art. So life is art, and life presents you canvases. So when you're entering a relationship or a marriage, that becomes like a blank plate or a blank canvas or a blank slate, I mean. And your actions, your words, and whatever you do, any activity now becomes the paint that you put there. And whatever you receive is the art. When you go to work, when you've been recently employed, their experience, you don't have it, it becomes zero. So work, when you're new, becomes a blank canvas, white. And every day when you go to work, you're either an overachiever, an average achiever, underperformer, whichever you want to call yourself. But every actions, your speech, your dressing, your tonality, when you're leading meetings, when you're designing a strategy, when you're being the engine behind the implementation, you basically are putting paint onto the blank canvas at work. And so, as a public speaker, the podium, the stage, where you've been given the microphone becomes a canvas. And I want to show you how you can paint that canvas. Number one is weaponize silence. So last week I talked about when you go on stage, the first thing, you don't want to come and say, oh, my name is Bill Somido, and this is my bio, this is my qualification, these are my titles. No. Pause for 5 to 10 seconds. Let the people look at you because of how you're dressed. People look at you, how your facial expression look like. Remember, you are the starring in that movie at that particular point. You can actually pause when you've dropped some nuggets. Like I just want to pause now. And what you're basically doing is you're letting some hard truths, some data, some stories to sink in. Silence is the loudest sound on stage. Use it well. That is how to be creative. So don't just talk. I rarely see preachers do this. I rarely see other people who are public speakers do this. Utilize sound of silence. Silence is also sound on stage. One of the things I like also doing is I like taking objects or props on stage. If you want to talk about how maybe you struggle going to school without shoes, bring a shoe on stage. You can actually say, friends, I wish 30 years ago I had this machine to help me move around. And I'm saying so because the moment I would move around walking naked, one day maybe a snake bit me or something like that. You've actually attracted attention. You can use an old phone. You can actually say, this is what you used to use 10 years ago. How many remember? People lift up their hands. Can be a ton later. Can actually even bring an envelope and say, how many of you have ever written a letter to your girlfriends? Conversation starter. You can even dress a certain way. So one of the things that I teach people and I train myself is I look at the audience that I'm going to speak to. If it's young people, dress like them, or you can defy that and obstruct and be different. If you want to pass a message, what is that object or prop that you're going to use on stage? A prop can be a video. So what a video does is a video is on screen, play it for a few seconds. It helps you to accentuate whatever message you're passing. The video is not the main message, but it's a prop that you're using. You can actually bring people on stage to act out for a few seconds whatever you wanted to say. We call it staging the story. So for example, you can say, when I was young, my mom would say, hey, Milaps, why are you home late? And then my father will say, please, mama boy, wacha kusumbua huyo kijana. So that is enacting or staging the story. So last week we also talked about varying your tone, pacing uh, your speech, volume. It's basically like music. What is that one message that you want people to remember? You can say it at the beginning of the speech, say it again at the middle, repeat it in one of your action points, and then finish it. One of my favorite speakers is somebody called Roy Okonji, actually a very good financial expert in Kenya. Just go and look for him. Every message, I've actually known him, I think, for now 4 or 3 years. When he finishes his speech, he always says, you can do better. Every time, whether he's on Zoom or whether he's talking to hundreds of people, you can do better. Whether he's presenting a slide, the last word is you can do better. I think you remember the slogan of Obama. It was, yes, we can. For Eliud Kipchoge, anytime he goes anywhere, he may not say it many times, but you always know that no human is limited. What is that one thing that people can remember in your speech? They may forget all the hundreds and thousands of words that you say, but there's always one slogan, one callback, truth, or hardliner that you want them to remember. Plant those callbacks. I love this, and this is where I'm an expert at. It's calling the breaking the fourth wall. So breaking the fourth wall is basically you are the main speaker on stage, but then you involve other people into your story. So for example, I can actually say, I grew up in Nyalenda, Kisumu. People call it a slum, but I think it's not a slum. How many are from Kisumu? Do you think Nyalenda is a slum? People say, yes, it's a slum. It's not a slum. Let them, give them a few seconds to say something. You're making the conversation very interesting. Ask questions, create a poll. Ask them how many believe that President Ruto is going to be the president again. 50-50, 40-30. Create a mini debate, and from that, talk about whatever politics you want to talk about or whatever message you want to talk about. I call it co-creation. Once in a while, I also support organizations and I lead organization in human-centered design or community participatory design, where I help people brainstorm. What basically means is that I get to understand people, and if there's a problem that they need to solve, I lead them into solving that problem. So co-creation. So next time you're thinking how to be unique, use some of these tools. Remember, the stage is your canvas. Use it well. Utilize it well. Use silence at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. Use a prop. What is that one thing that you are talking about and you want people to remember? So a prop can be brand colors, can be a story, can be a PowerPoint slide, can be an object, anything that people remember. So out of 30 people or 10 people in a conference, people will say, wow, do you remember the guy who came with a torn trouser or two different colored shoes? Remember the guy who slept for 1 minute as a speaker on stage? Do something crazy that people will remember. And what was the message? He was talking about life is never that serious. Just get your 8 hours to sleep. You'll try again tomorrow. Vary your soundtrack. Moments. Talk slowly, talk lowly. Sometimes go up pace, fast, slow, and all that. Watch my other video, talk about that quite profoundly. Have a slogan that you want to repeat throughout, and then bring people on stage to act, bring dialogue, and co-create with the people. So what is your signature phrase? What is that thing that you want people to know you about? For me, it's be brave. Actually, when you go to my Google account, I am Brave Billups. And that is a message. Everywhere I go on this earth, I want people to stop living in fear and be brave. Recently, I've been applying for some jobs of being a country director, executive director. I know I can do it, so I'm being brave. And soon I'm gonna be. I'm setting my name in the books of great authors. So this year alone, I've actually written 5 books. By December, I'm gonna be writing 15. I'm a good storyteller, and when I was in high school, I was in the drama club, so I've got a lot of stories. I've also directed schools in Kisumu around 2010, 2011, and they won at the national level in storytelling and even plays, Kenya National Drama Festival. Music Festival, I've supported many schools in terms of writing, script writing, drama, directing, producing, and they won at the national level. So I have stories, and every day my work is to watch movies, and I love a good story. Once in a while, I go to the Kenya National Theatre and just watch Crony, Heartstrings, and just watch stories. But there's a message that everywhere I go, I want people to be brave, brave in life, launch that product, start that business, write that book, enter that relationship, or quit or move to another job. I want people to be brave. So whatever message I'm laying out, as I'm talking about relationships, I'm talking about public speaking, I'm speaking about potential purpose, I'm talking about food security, I'm talking about livelihoods, I'm talking about financial inclusion, I'm talking about women empowerment, whichever way, I always want people to be brave. So take a minute and think about what is your message and how do you want to be remembered? What is your slogan? Anto, ehe, okay, sawa, haya. Okay, sawa, acha nitume saizi, patie dakika kidogo, haya. Okay, haya, sawa. say, no matter what they say, no matter what the strategies they make, at the end of the day, most of our foundations exist to fight poverty. When I look at newsletters and everything, banking sector, the reason why we are doing that is because a normal banking industry rarely what? There's the truth. The reason why you guys are here and you're looking for because not all of them, data machine those women, most of them, and even then, what are they doing? They're creating solutions for poverty eradication, employment, and all that. Number one is teaching poverty. Look at the first five SDGs. The linked second one, zero hunger. That's poverty. Getting. Number three is good health and well-being. That's poverty. Number four, good education. Number five, gender equality. Why? Gender equality only exists where women, mostly women, cannot own assets. Why? Because they're downtrodden. Nobody cares. People in poverty. Climate change. The people that are affected by climate change are third world countries. And that's why there's a whole story of carbon credits and all that. And for me, I'm very particular about this. And that's seeing even the IFS says too, climate change. So we have to find policy frameworks which we have to socialize, but also in our capacity. What are the strategic moves that we can do using bridging whatever we have for that? The wording may be different, but all of us are here to fight poverty, financial inclusion, inclusive economic development, education, the scholarships, that is poverty. One of the things I may be interested in when I come in, if I get an opportunity, is I want to understand what is the philosophy around whatever we are doing. The philosophy around CSI. Already what makes me happy is that you've changed the language from CSR, responsibility, to mandate. Vincent, ni aje? Pata hiyo map. Kuna pale unaenda inaitwa Printwell. Uniletee vitabu fulani. Niko hapa Karen. Haya, sawa. Okay, nakutumia saizi. Haya, sawa. Atakuwa hapo in 3 minutes, anakuja. Nimempatia namba yako na kupigia. Haya. Yeah. So hope you've thought about it. What is your signature press? The second thing you wanna do is have an opening ritual. Just a message here. What is your ritual? What is that thing that you usually do so that people can actually know that you've arrived? Do you have a quote you always say? Do you have a proverb that you say? Or are you a musician and you want to sing something? Nimetembea sijamuona msichana kama Oko. Talk about relationships. And that song can be a signature song that anywhere you go in any conference, people know you. So it becomes your brand. But also sometimes it can be maybe you want to change how you introduce yourself all the time, which is okay. And you'll be known as that different or that unique speaker. Is it a question, a proverb? Is it a line? So enter with a bang. So you can actually invent your own structure also. I'm still talking about a few things that can make your talk to be very interesting. Begin by the action point, go to the message, and then go to the introduction. Who says you must have an introduction? I can actually say my action point as I begin my speech is for you not to get married before you're 25. Because by then, pre-25s, your brain has not yet developed to handle the pressures of marriage or a relationship. In fact, let me make it bold. If you're pre-25 and you're a man, don't get married. My bold contradictory statement is this: only get married 30 years and above. And then go to the content and then finish with the background or the introduction. Nobody ever said that you cannot begin with an action point, a rallying call. So you can actually speak backwards on the content, in short, not just the content. Change the structure. So if you're giving a sermon, for example, and most of the time we begin with singing and then preaching, why don't you begin with preaching, then singing? I see pastors preach and then they pray. Why don't you pray and then preach? So own your format uniqueness and also repetition, repetition. Let me repeat this. At the end of the day, no matter what your message is, your anchor message should actually have this: a story that you've lived, an experience, a scar, a wound, anything that you've lived. That is now your story, which extrapolates to the burning desire. I talked about an obsession. What is that burning desire? And then the third thing would be, what do you want people to change? Their pain point, their ache. What does the room need? So your message has got three things. It brings them together: your story, your scar. You are abused, you are defiled when you are 7 years, and another time when you're 15 years. The fire that burns within you is safeguarding and child protection. You want girls to be safe, gender-based violence. And the ache is that many women in relationships are being abused and they're not talking. Up, you have it. If you forget anything here, is what is the story? What is the fire that burns within you so strong? And what do the people want? So if you're an evangelist, if you're a preacher, if you're a Christian, this is how your pastor would frame it. The story that you have is you used to be in drunkenness, you used to have issues with your esteem, or you used to have maybe an addiction. That is the story you've lived. You're struggling with alcoholism for 5 years, for 10 years, and you even lost your relationships and your family. You are now poor. Maybe you used to be a bank director, you used to be a school principal, you lost that. That is your story. A scar, a wound, a pain, a failure. But also number two is, what is the fire that burns within you? And that fire is the change that you want people to be sober, because you believe that sobriety changes people and they're able to make concrete decisions about their life. Fire that burns within you. And then lastly is that you've seen many young people, or you've seen people in their 30s who begin slowly into drugs, maybe from campus, and they have lost direction. They're not able to achieve their purpose and their potential. Bam. So what is your story? What is your fire? And then what is the aching point of the people that you're working with? Write it down. Let me give you a few seconds to write it down. Halo, nimekutumia, angalia kwa hii namba tu. Kwa message. Umefika hapo lakini umefika. Angalia app, angalia app, angalia app. So hope you've written that. What is your story? What is your fire? What is the ache of the people? Anytime you're talking to people, ensure that you answer their ache. People follow you because of the problems that you're solving for them. And many people wake up at 3 a.m. because they're stressed, they're depressed, they're anxious. Anxiety kills them and they're depressed and they don't know what to do. They just want somebody to talk to them. So, what is your story? What can they relate? What burns deeply within you? And what is the pain point of people? Lastly, the world is not waiting for another speaker, it is waiting for a voice it has never heard. So dig your voice print, your scars, your obsession, your contradictions, your soil. Your soil is your background, use it. You stammer, you are a Meru, you're a Kikuyu, you're a European, you're a Dutch. Use that voice, that accent, very powerful. Choose one creative stage move and master it fully. Is it a story? Is it a song? Is it a prop? What is your brand when you go on stage? A canvas of public speaking or the podium or the stage is so huge. Choose one thing. Coin one signature phrase or slogan. For me is be brave. For Obama is yes we can. For Kipchoge is no human is limited. Hope you remember for Lupita, yeah? So what is that one phrase, one word that when you say it, people know it? People recognize you. You can use it on TikTok, on YouTube, in your presentations and all that. Thank you. Hope you've learned something about being creative on stage, owning your story, using your scars, your obsession, your contradictions, your soil, and lastly, do not be like any other speaker. My name is Bill Somido. I help organizations structure their innovation, their solutions, and I'm also a public speaker. Find me on 0716 353 711. 0716 353 711 or omidobilabs@gmail.com. Bye bye. Be that speaker.